Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reflexology and Foot Reading Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Belyea, affectionately known by my clients and students as the Foot Whisperer, and we are about to go deep with a woman who needs no introduction, but I will attempt to give you a glimpse into her laundry list of achievements nonetheless. She is a reflexologist. She is an author of 4, soon-to-be 5 books, including Reflexes Physical and Emotional, A Reflexologist's Guide, Soul Trader, The Foot Reading Coach, and everyone's favorite, Let's Read Our Feet. She is the premier celebrity foot reader who specializes in analyzing the structure and texture of imbalances within the feet to understand someone's emotions and personality. She is my personal inspiration and an inspiration to so many others. Please welcome the one and only Jane Sheehan. Welcome, Jane.
Gosh, that sounds good.
I could give you a copy of it after the interview.
Oh.
I took it directly from your website. You're so good with technology.
Oh, thank you.
So let's start kind of at the beginning. What was it like as you were starting to delve into the world of reflexology and foot reading?
Oh, you wouldn't have believed it. You know, I was working for an avionics design engineer called Ray Smith.
Okay.
And my friend Claudine said, I fancy some reflexology for my birthday. And I didn't even know what it was. And if you'd have told me then, I probably wouldn't have gone. I'd have been really cynical and I'd thought, oh, get out of here, you know. So I go along and Claudine's having her feet treated. And they were telling her all about her health. And I'm thinking, how do you know that? So then when it was my turn, every time they touched my big toe, I had tears streaming down my face. And it repeated on the other foot. And I'm there, I'm so sorry, I never cry in public. There, better out than in. And I'm thinking, well, it's all right for you to say, you know. But the most amazing thing is at the end of this one reflexology treatment, I felt like I was in slow motion. And everybody else, the whole world, was on fast forward. And it was such an amazing feeling that I had to know more. So I went to study reflexology at the Chiltern School of Reflexology. And, sorry, my dad's knocking on the window. I tell you, when you're a celebrity foot reader, you know, your family kind of don't respect that.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Anyway, so there I am. I'm studying reflexology, loving it, and thinking it's so alien to what I've been doing. You know, it wasn't engineering, it wasn't office admin, you know. So at the end of the course, you do 65 hours of case studies, or you did in those days.
Right.
All my case studies had huge emotional reactions. Of course, I'm looking for that because I had that.
Right.
So I'm thinking, what is this connection? What is going on? And even now, after reflexology, they report back that they've been feeling really tearful over the last few days. I mean, you hear that all the time, don't you, Sam?
Totally.
So I'm thinking, well, what is this connection? So I set about trying to find out. So I came across Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life.
Love that book.
Now, I've since met Louise before she died.
Right.
When it was her 80th birthday, I met her that year.
Oh.
Anyway, that book teaches you that behind each physical ailment there's an emotional imbalance, and it gives you affirmations to kind of change the thinking and the energy. Well, being an engineer, being, you know, a muggle, I was thinking, yeah, right, what about viruses, what about bacteria? Because you would, wouldn't you?
Right.
Anyway, there's a part of me that's mischievous. So the mischievous part of me was giving my clients homework of those affirmations and seeing massive change. And I was thinking, blimey, there's something to this. So I'll have to look into it. So that opened me up to the idea, at least, that there's a mind and body connection.
Right.
So then, when I came across Imre Shamagi's book, which you've seen, Reading Toes.
Yeah, I love that book.
I was open enough to at least read it, whereas I think the old me wouldn't have, right? So I read it, and I was fascinated because he came up with a toe alphabet after interviewing 5,000 people about toe shapes and personality, allocating one of the 5 elements to each of the toes. And if you've seen his toes, you'd know why he did it.
Yes,
okay?
totally.
So he did this research. He was a journalist before he was a toe reader. And he came up with this book. So I started using it. And it got to the stage where people would come to my house and kick the shoes off, and I'd be reading their feet before they'd said a word. And it got to the stage where I'd go to a party and I'd get a foot in my hand before I'd get a glass.
Mm-hmm.
And a girl in my village, my then village I lived in, Helena, invited me to do a fundraiser at the local playgroup. And she says, why don't you come along and help us out? So I rock up in my scruffs ready to serve tea and coffee and hump tables. And she's going, no. That's your stand over there. And I'm thinking, what stand? And so she had been advertising all week that I'm going to be doing reflexology or foot reading. And we had this massive queue of people going right out the door. We had no booking forms, so we had no way of controlling numbers. What do you charge for that? Who knew what to charge? Because no one was doing it in its own right. And so we had a donation pot, and it was trial by fire because I knew the theory. I'd never done it for money before. Well, I learned so much in that one day, like what to say, how to say it, how not to say it. A lot not to do. And also afterwards the learning continued because I'd be in the local supermarket and in the queue and people would come up and go, oh, you're that foot reader, I've been meaning to ask you about this Veruca. Or they'd be saying, oh, do you remember when you told me I collected ducks? And I'm thinking, no way did I say you collected ducks. I might have said you're a collector, not a hoarder, but there's no way I would have known what. So what I was learning is if you phrase things specifically vague, they can project more into it than you actually know. So they start thinking you're psychic because you seem to hit on just the thing they want you to know. Well, I would not claim to be psychic. I would claim to be a brilliant reader of feet and people.
I just did a webinar the other night on a section of my book, Elements of a Symptom, talking about decoding the elements in the feet and working with that kind of theory. And one of the students jumped on, who's actually in my live certification program here in Tampa, and she said, my clients think that it's witchcraft. They think that it's so accurate. And I'm like, no, all you have to do is tell them and show them, like, there's a science behind it. You're just interpreting. Yeah.
Well, that's true, but actually I don't think they want to know. When they say, oh, gosh, how do you know that? They're not saying, how do you know that? They're saying, that is amazing, but in different words. So I just wink and I go, magic, right? I just say, because they don't actually want to know that there's a science behind it. They just want to express amazement. And, you know, if they, it's like anything, a magician never tells their secrets.
Right.
Because once you know, it's not magical anymore.
True. That's an amazing way to look at it.
In my early days of foot reading, I hated it being called psychic or being put in with the psychics because I was trying to reach other muggles to show them that, look, I'm normal like you and I can do this and I'm not psychic and it's amazing. And they kept giving me that label. I suppose if you say reader, they think psychic. But I've given up worrying about it now. If someone comes to me because they think I'm psychic, great, let me at them. I will be as accurate as I possibly can, and they'll go away amazed, bowled over, and it won't matter that I didn't live up to the label they gave me.
True.
So
that's amazing. I mean, so many nuggets that you're just giving to. I can already see the faces of the people watching this as they're or listening to this as they're kind of going through it in their mind. I mean, I've never thought about it that way before. It's fascinating. I mean, you have so many experiences underneath your belt, like...
Gosh, I think, well, when I first started, there wasn't really anyone to tell me what to do or how to do it. There were a couple of books out there, but they lived in other countries, and so I had no access to the people. And the internet it was early days. People didn't have computers in their home. They might have had them at work, but it was early days. And so I just had to kind of read up on it and start using it. And it's only when you start using it, you realise what you know, what you don't know, what you wish you knew. And also you fine-tune it, because Imri's book was translated. And the problem with this translation is the use of language. If you get the word a tiny shade of meaning different, it might not work.
Right.
So I've now done set phrases. I try and get my students to memorise the set phrase because they're benchmarked and they will work. And like, for example, when I read Wide Feet, Wide Feet, hardworking, always on the go, can't sit still, have to be doing something all the time. I tease them, I say, if I were to offer you a cuppa, you'd be getting the cups out of the cupboard to help. You couldn't just sit there and let me do it. Now, I deliberately say cuppa, because in the early days, I said cup of tea, and they go, oh, no, Jane, I don't drink tea, I drink coffee.
Right.
So you've lost the whole impetus of what you're trying to say. You're trying to say you're hardworking, and instead they're focusing on a beverage.
Right.
Well, that's going to ruin the reading, right? So I'm learning what works, what doesn't work. Even now I'm learning, It's only been doing it 17 years. It's still not long enough.
I don't think it ever feels long enough. What for somebody who's just starting, what's some of the advice that you could potentially give somebody who's falling down the rabbit hole of foot reading?
You are about to enter the most amazing adventure. One of my students said that it was the feeling she got from learning to foot read was like the feeling she got when she first went scuba diving and saw this whole amazing alien world under the sea. She said it was just like that. All of a sudden, you've got a new way of seeing things that have always been there and you just didn't know how to look. So I would say, have fun. Don't be scared about what to say. Don't think, oh, should I say this or shouldn't I? Just trust that if you say it, you're going to get a reaction, and that reaction will teach you whether you should have said it or not. And if you're coming from the right heart space, that you want to help this person, you want to reflect them back in all their beauty and their full potential, they won't mind what you say, and they certainly don't mind if you get it wrong. And if you're really worried about it, wear an L plate.
True. Yeah.
They're not going to hate you if you get it wrong, and it'll be one step to getting it right. Now, on my course, I say you can make as many mistakes as you want today. This is the day. This is where you get permission to make mistakes, because from that you'll learn. Trying to do it perfect first time, how are you going to learn?
Exactly.
You learn more from what goes wrong.
So let's talk about your book, Let's Read Our Feet. The first book that really kind of, it's what hooked me into foot reading. What was it like writing that book, or deciding even that you wanted to write that book and share what you had found out with the world?
I'm really embarrassed about why I wrote it.
Why are you embarrassed?
Well, you meet people who are gurus and they had this vision and they were going to do it. Like, most of my decisions, I've just kind of knee-jerk reaction jumped into it, not knowing the pros and cons, but just having an idea and acting on it. I'm quite impulsive. And what was happening is I'd finished my daytime job. I was no longer a wage slave.
Okay.
And all the fear that entails, like, will I earn enough? What am I doing? What have I done? Should I be doing this? And on top of that, in 4 months' time, so this was March 2005 when I went full-time. And in July 2005, I'd planned to go to Hawaii, to Maui, to do a self-actualization learning technique workshop for a 30-day immersion. Right, wow. Get this. 4 months into being full-time, I was going to give up a whole month of my time to do someone else's workshop.
Oh, my God.
How crazy is that, right? So you can imagine the time's starting to happen, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? You've just started your business. So I thought, right, get serious. I'm going to go to Hawaii anyway. What do I need to do to appease that little voice in my head that's getting panicky? So I thought, I need to run a workshop while I'm out there, so I'm going on a business trip. Now, what I didn't know at the time, that there were massive beneficial tax implications of doing this.
Right.
If it's a business trip, you can claim your flights back against your business, right? The minute you do something personal, you can't. So I hired a PR and marketing guy out there to help spread the word that I was coming. And having worked in PR in one of my many, many, many office jobs years ago, I knew that the minute you've written a book, you're an expert, right?
Right.
So I thought, well, I'm going to Hawaii. No one in Hawaii has ever met me or heard of me. If I've written and published a book, by the time I get there, they'll see me as an expert. It'll open doors that would otherwise be shut.
Right.
So I wrote my book, right? And I'd started writing it when I was still part-time employed.
Okay.
It was a quiet time at work and I was writing it at work.
Right.
So I shouldn't be admitting this if my ex-boss is listening. So I won't mention which ex-boss it was, but I wrote my book at work and I saved it to a disc and I took it home and I worked on it then. I found a graphic designer, I found a printer. I basically learnt everything I needed to know about self-publishing and just went ahead and did it because I knew I didn't have 4 months. I only had 4 months to write, produce, print, and get it out to Hawaii.
Right.
So I knew I didn't have time to find a publisher and send out rejection letters, and I just didn't have time for all that. So I just did it. Anyway, I put it on my website, I put it on Amazon, and I took a whole box of books with me to Hawaii, paid excess baggage at the airport, and went out there, and wow, all of a sudden I was this British foot reader, author in Hawaii, running workshops out there and being invited to do talks and meeting people from all over the world because Hawaii is a massive holiday destination.
Yeah.
So I met 3 wonderful girls from Alaska, who told me all about being reflexologists over there meant putting the foot cream in the microwave before they could treat the client because it had solidified on the drive over to the client.
Oh my God.
I was learning things you would never have anticipated learning in Hawaii. I was meeting amazing Hawaiians who were teaching me about Ho'oponopono and
Right.
Lomi Lomi and all this. I was meeting very, very spiritual people. So this was when the spiritual part of my journey came in because I'd only done mind and body at that stage.
Right.
I was meeting other therapists with other amazing therapies that I had never heard of. In England, I'd not come across people doing it. So I learned a massive amount and I spent 2 months over there. So in 2 months, and I didn't do the original workshop I went over to do.
What?
But my friend did. My friend Simon went on it. And every time he came out of the workshop and went into Paia, there was posters all over Paia saying, foot reader, Jane Sheehan, workshop. He's thinking, what is she doing now? And then when he bumped into me next, I was with Wayne Dyer and his wife at a house where Ram Dass was doing darshan. And he looked over and he thought, there's Jane. And then he thought, is she with Wayne Dyer? Right? And then he looked and he thought, and Ram Dass. And he's thinking, what is going on? What has she been doing while we've been on this workshop? I'll tell you, it was magical. I could not have anticipated all this.
So the workshop was just the bait to get you over to Hawaii to do this work and really validate, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
So all of a sudden, there's all these people from all over the world who've learnt about foot reading in the short time that I'm in Hawaii and who are taking it to other parts of the world, having learnt it from me. And that was within 4 months of going full-time. I'd been doing part-time since 99, but in 2005 I went full-time. Wish I'd done it sooner.
Right?
It's all about divine timing, isn't it?
Very, very true. So since that transformation took place and you are now elevated to celebrity foot reader status, what was life like at that point? You fly home, you just had this amazing experience, this 2-month journey in Hawaii, and now you're setting foot on your home turf as a celebrity. What was the shift?
Gosh, I mean, you would not have expected it. Well, I would not have. I was just doing one foot in front of the other, making small decisions, which turned out to be massive, but I didn't know at the time. I just, feel the fear and do it anyway. I didn't know what there was to be scared of till after I'd done it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just got on and did it. When I came back, my father said to me, "I'm really proud of you." And I said, "Why, Pops, what have I done?" And he said, "You went to the other side of the world where you didn't know anyone, and you set up a business from scratch in 2 months, a successful business." And I looked at him and my jaw dropped and I went, "Oh, are you serious?" And when I heard it through his eyes, I thought, "Oh, how did I do that?" Because, yes, that's exactly what I'd done, but that wasn't how I framed it. I framed it as, "Oh, well, I better get that done to appease this little voice in my head that said, 'Are you mad going all that way when you've just started your business?'" But when he put it like that, I thought, blimey, that is pretty impressive. Now, when I got back to England, the fact I'd been abroad, people going, "Oh, you went to Hawaii, what was that like?" And, "Oh, you've written a book, what you know." And all of a sudden I realised people see me differently than I see myself,
Yeah.
which is pretty weird. And then I was going to workshops, and when I'd been on TV, I went on TV. I did This Morning on ITV the day after I started my business full time. And I got a card off a friend saying, "Now you're famous, you won't want to talk to us anymore." And I thought, what? And I suddenly realised other people's perceptions of you when you've done something like that can get in the way of that personal rapport. So it's made me realise you've got to stay true to your roots and humble and be grateful that these amazing things happen to you, but not let them get in the way of how you interact with people, because the onus is on me now to make sure that they don't think I'm different and that I'm one of them, because I am.
Yeah.
Well, you know yourself. I mean, you've got a bit of fame with your students and your podcasts and things, and it is very easy to get swept up and think that you're the big I am.
Yeah.
Unless you've got the right people around you going, "No, knock it off, behave yourself," you know. So it is important, I think, that you remember you're just like everybody else. And I think the real joy, the real gift for me is getting to meet the most amazing therapists all over the world, because now I get invitations to go to Australia, Dubai. I've been to California, do you know that?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I went to San Diego and La Jolla and Los Angeles and did workshops over there, thanks to a friend of mine called Jean Ryan, who she isn't even a therapist, or she wasn't then, and she just saw what I was doing and thought it would be great if I came over. And if I've learned anything in business, it's the minute someone invites you to do something, say yes and then figure out how you're going to do it. Because I think it's easy to say no because you've never done it before. But if you commit to something, then you find a way.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah. That's a beautiful message. So
Yeah.
perfect. But
I'm not saying it's easy, because I still get petrified when I agree to do things.
right.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I went to France, didn't I, in November?
Oh, yeah.
So in November, you were giving a podcast with Kelly Hainsworth on Love Reflexology page. And while you were there, I was watching you while I was in France. And I was giving a workshop in France, in French, to 14 French people. And as the time arrived for me to go, I was thinking, what have I done? Why did I agree to do this? And I'd made a commitment to myself that I would talk in French. And the lady who'd invited me said, well, she'll translate. I speak in English, she'll translate into French. But the more I pictured it in my head, the more I thought that's not going to work, because it'll take 4 days instead of 2 days if we do that. And what if the translation isn't exactly the right words? So I thought, no, I've got to do it. So I polished up my skills, and I got my auntie who lives in France to help me amend all my slides into French. And also a few people on Facebook who helped me with certain words we couldn't find in dictionaries, like fed up, razzleball, in case you were interested. So
Wow.
we were doing lots of things like that, trying to get it right. And when I went, I can't tell you how nervous I was, so dry-mouthed before we started. And the minute I got going, it just came out. And whenever I got stuck on a word, which wasn't that often, I'd look at Karine, who was helping me from the Académie Reflexology Traditionnelle, and I said to Karine, how do you say traditional? And she'd go, traditionnel. How do you say relational? Relationnel. And all of a sudden I realised most of the words I didn't know how to say were the same word with a different accent. So I carried on, just any word I didn't know, I'd say it in a French accent, and it seemed to work. So it was really good fun. And I managed it. Now, the feedback I got at the end of the workshop from the two organisers, they said, "We've learned something from you, Jane, for our own teaching." And I was really intrigued. I thought, what can you possibly have learned from an English person speaking French, you know? And they said, because you spoke so slowly, it was very easy to learn and memorise and understand. And I thought, was I speaking slowly? Because you've heard me now, I don't talk slowly naturally.
Right.
But I realised because I was translating from English to French in my head and speaking it, I must have been much slower than I am in English, just by nature of speaking another language. So I've learnt something for myself for my future workshops, that I've got to slow down and speak slowly because it's much easier for the student.
Anything else like that you've kind of picked up along the way as you've been teaching in other places? Just kind of little tidbits or things that maybe you didn't expect to learn along the way?
Give loads of examples, because examples speak louder than the theory. So examples make it live. And I would say, if you can find someone with Asperger's, where they don't get metaphor, it's extremely challenging to teach them foot reading, because what you use is metaphors. And they're a stickler for rules, so if the rule changes, I might not notice because I'm quite intuitive about how to change things. And I worked with my e-learning seminar with a lady in New York who had this sort of difference in learning, and she taught me so much through the questions she asked that made me change how I teach, because all of a sudden, seeing it through her eyes, I realised there's a lot of kind of sort of secret rule violations that I make. When this is like this, then don't do that, do this. And I realised I had a lot of times when I broke my own rules, but I didn't know I did until she pulled me up on it. So that was very interesting, and it has changed the way I give some of my workshops now, some of the things I teach.
Would you suggest then to maybe foot readers that have studied with you or have started to get confident that they start to rally around maybe a couple of their closest friends or go to a local health food store and teach what they know to help solidify some of the information or to help work out the kinks?
I would say the best way to learn foot reading is to do it. And the more feet you see and the more people you read, the better you get, because the only person who knows if you're right or not is the person you're reading. So I'd say that is your first step. Then, as you know, anything you teach, you end up learning as much from your students as you're giving them, but only if you're open to it. Some people teach and they want to be right and they want everybody else to listen. So it depends what sort of teacher you are. Yeah. But yeah, I think if you teach it, you'll learn from your students. You asked me, what made you write the foot reading coach?
Yeah.
And I would say all my books have arrived through questions my students have asked me. And after Let's Read Our Feet, the questions changed. And it was kind of, okay, so I know this person's a hoarder. What do I tell them?
Right.
So I thought, let's put Foot Reading Coach together. And it was not just that, it was, how do I know I got it right? So how can you read their IQs? Or how did you know that when she said that, she meant this? And so I thought we need to put in how you understand the hidden language from the words they actually say. So I've put quite a lot of, it looks really simple. I'm just good at making complex things seem simple. So I've put together a foot reading coach based on their questions. And the one criticism I've seen about it on Amazon was, Jane makes you feel that anybody can be a counsellor. And they were saying it in a tone of like, that's a bad thing. But I think everybody is a counsellor when they listen, because that's what counselling is, listening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not taking on board that criticism.
I tell my students that all the time. You know, and when we get into this level of work where, you know, the clients are starting to sob and the clients are starting to share their life story and, you know, the magic starts to unfold before you, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how to open your listening to allow the words to come out in a way that's compassionate, constructive, insightful, and that doesn't happen by accident. So I think that criticism, like you said, is totally invalid, because when we're starting to bridge the gap between...
therapists.
Exactly.
If we're not good at that, we should not be therapists.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I would say this to you.
Okay.
Do you feel now that you're doing it wrong if you don't make someone cry?
Oh, yeah, totally. 100%.
Yeah, when you first start, someone cries and you think, oh, gosh, I've made them cry. Now you think, bingo, got you.
Yep.
I've got you right where I want you. And then from the tears, change, evolution, revolution can occur. Curiosity is the highest state for change. And I find you can't get curious while you're hanging on to tears. You've got to bring the tears up and out, and then the curiosity arrives. And I chase that curiosity. All my coaching questions are to chase the curiosity, because curiosity is the highest state for change.
You can't hold on to curiosity if you're holding on to tears. Somebody write that down somewhere. Like that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So you had Let's Read Our Feet, and then the foot reading coach. Where was book number 3? How did that come out?
Soul Trader. Well, again, my students started asking different questions, because obviously I'm answering the questions in those books. Mm-hmm. So the next question was, Jane, shall I advertise in Yellow Pages? Now, I don't know if you have Yellow Pages over there, but you do. So you can imagine it's like a list of different businesses and their phone numbers. And I was thinking, oh boy, you are so asking the wrong question. The real question is, what sort of person needs what I've got to offer, and where do they hang out? And so I was thinking, I need to start addressing some of these business questions, because a lot of people learn reflexology, foot reading, massage, all of these things because they want to start a therapy business. And I came to realise not all of them have got business skills. Well, I was sort of lucky or unlucky that I'd spent a lot of my life in business. So I picked up a lot of skills along the way, and I thought I need to start sharing that information as well. So I wrote Soul Trader with a view to answering those questions, but I put a lot more in there than you would expect from the average business book, because most business books start out telling you to write a business plan, but they don't tell you how to put that plan together when you've absolutely no idea how many clients you're going to get. Right. You don't know what to charge, don't know how many clients you're going to get. Where do you begin? So I wrote it for them with those sort of ideas of how to get around that. And then I thought, you do a pamper evening, what do you take with you? And I thought, what about PR and marketing? Now, PR is one of the cheapest routes to market. And so long as you've got the skills yourself, you can almost, apart from giving up your time, do it for free. Whereas advertising costs money. So I was thinking, like, what are the things that will work for a beginner just starting out who hasn't got a big budget? Or if they have a budget, how can they spend it wisely? So I was kind of putting that together. And then I thought I'd better put something in about working abroad, because, you know, I did Hawaii after all and some other places. So I thought, well, I've learned a few things about that. And it's just answering the questions the students wanted to know. And it took a year to think about it. and it took 2 weeks to write it.
2 weeks, that's it?
Yeah, but it's a year and 2 weeks, because that cogitation, that is an important part of the process. Most people call it procrastinating. I think you need that period for the ideas to ripen.
To cook, yeah.
So I think you need to keep a notebook with you and just park your ideas in a notebook. And then when I sat down to write, I just pulled them all out, put them on Post-it notes, rearranged them into a logical order, and they became my chapter headings. Yeah. And then you don't have to write in a linear fashion. You can write what you feel like writing that day.
Yeah, totally. So we have book number 1, 2, and 3. Let's talk about the latest book in the series that you co-wrote pretty much with at least half the Association of Reflexologists, let's be honest.
Yes.
So what was that collaborative process like? How did that book start to begin, and then how did it all tie itself up?
I'm not 100% sure whose idea it first was, but I think it was Tracy Smith and maybe Sally Earlham, certainly 2 members of the Association of Reflexologists, who thought it would be a good idea to write a book about reflexology with all the points and the biology, the diseases that those organs link to, the questions to ask the client if it's physical, and then the questions to ask if it's not physical, is it emotional? And they wanted kind of an all-singing, all-encompassing book. So they started writing it, and they asked a couple of foot readers, and it ended up being me and Sue Ricks who collaborated on the emotional stuff.
Okay.
Now, Sue and I have got very, very different views on emotional reading, so it is a compromise, because we had to include both ideas.
Right.
So it is a compromise. But I think all in all, it's a pretty good book for a beginner reflexologist who's just starting out, who wants to know a lot about where the points are, what they look like, what to look for, what the illnesses are related to that, what questions to ask. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Awesome.
But my 5th book, which is with the graphic designer now, is called So You Think You Know Reflexology.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah. And it was a project that originally started with Yvette Eastman. Yvette Eastman has died, sadly. She is a canine reflexologist that I know from Canada. She ran Touchpoint Reflexology in Canada. And she contacted me one day and said, I'd like to put together a pamphlet for my students about the different forms of reflexology. So I said, I know a lot of people who would write you a chapter. So she had no funds. She was going to ask them to do it for free. And so I asked quite a lot of my friends to send her chapters. And I even came up with the title for her pamphlet, which was So You Think You Know Reflexology. And we were going to have a deal where I could also sell it as an ebook, but she died before we did that. So I let some time elapse, and then I contacted her family, and I asked them permission to take that ball and run with it. So I now have, it's going to be a book about reflexology, so I'm going to put in my ideas about reflexology. So what I do, what I think when I'm doing a treatment, why I don't believe a lot of the history that's taught about reflexology, and why I think they need to kind of have another look and go back to basics and see what the real history is, rather than the one that the newspapers put out there. And then I've put in a chapter about the science, what we now know categorically does happen when you do a reflexology treatment, how it affects the brain, how it affects the heart. We're still missing one piece of information about the heart-brain connection. We've got the foot to brain and the foot to heart. We've not got the brain-heart connection, but someone has done an unpublished piece of work that proves it. So the AOR are trying to persuade a few people to repeat those results so that it can now be published, so that we can now claim those pieces of information. So I've written about that, and I've written about the different research that's been done into different ailments, and I've put that in there. And then I thought, right, I'm going to do what me and Yvette were doing. I'm going to contact all the people that I would like to write a chapter about their form of reflexology, give some takeaway tips and explain why it's different from the traditional reflexology that we were taught at school. And that will be the 10th chapter. Now, right now, the graphic designer has recruited a second illustrator because there are so many pictures to do that we're actually struggling to get it finished. So when she's finished doing that, I'll get it back, and then I need some proofreaders to check the final proof, and then it'll go to print. But this is a long process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's had it since March this year, and what we now, Christmas?
Yeah.
So it's been a long process. So I don't know what date to expect this out, but I'll let you know when it's ready, Sam.
I mean, you just blew my mind on so many levels with just the topics that you're taking a stab at, and redefining the history and incorporating the more medical scientific aspect. I mean, this book sounds like it's just going to be a bomb of credibility in the profession once it hits. I'm so excited to pick it up.
Now you're scaring me. So, like, don't talk to me about it like that, or I'll never publish it. No, I think reflexology is in its infancy, and the thing that made me want to write this book is because I don't know if you hear about this over there, but there is a council, an international network of reflexologists, and they get together and have symposiums, and they were trying to create the ultimate reflexology map because there's so many maps out there. They
Right.
wanted a definitive one. But as with anything by committee, it's always a compromise. And I think it's way too early to set it in stone because we're still learning what reflexology is, what it does, and what it can, and also, more importantly, what it can't help with. So I wanted to put this book out as a thought provoker rather than a definition. Yeah.
It seems like it's definitely going to do that in spades. Again, so excited. So besides this book, this bombshell of a book, what else do you have planned for 2018? What's next on the agenda?
Do you know, I am so excited. I have had a lady contact me from Russia, and she has said, Jane, I would like to translate your book into Russian, and I would like to find a publisher over here. What are your terms? So we're in the throes of looking at that right now. So I'm hoping in 2018 we will have our Russian version. And I am in the throes of translating Let's Read Our Feet myself into French. And I'm hoping those lovely ladies over at the Académie Traditionnelle will help me by reading what I've written and making sure that I've not said something I didn't mean to say, or making sure I don't offend anyone with my terrible French grammar. And hopefully, by the end of 2018, I should have a Russian and a French version of Let's Read Our Feet out there.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
And any other languages besides French and Russian?
I think two's enough for now. Like, I only French to any degree of comfort. I don't even know the Russian alphabet, so I'm thinking maybe this is the year I learn Russian.
Ooh.
So, yeah, don't hold your breath on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So between the writing and the hands-on sessions and the readings that you do, how do you find time for it all? How do you balance all of these aspects of your personal craft?
I go dancing. When you're a writer and a reflexologist, it's a very sedentary lifestyle. You're sitting down all the time. And I've got one of these Fitbits. Have you seen them? They count how many steps. Now, on a normal working day, I discovered I was doing no more than 2,000 steps a day. I mean, how terrible is that? You're supposed to do 10